I'm Kristina, and I'm an art history nerd. Join me each week as I hop, skip, and jump around the globe to explore the world of art. This is Tidbits, pocket-sized art history. Hi, everybody. Today's episode is by request from Jameson Koopman. Jameson asked me to talk about Frida Kahlo, and this is a great choice. Frida's story is one of the most interesting stories in all of art history. So today I'm going to talk about her background, her artistic influences, and specifically the largest painting she ever created, called the Two Fridas. Let's jump in. Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo y Calderón was born on July 6, 1907, to a German father and a mestiza Mexican mother. Although she was disabled by polio as a child at age 6, Kahlo had been a promising student headed for medical school until she suffered a bus accident at the age of 18, which caused her lifelong pain and medical problems. The accident was nearly fatal, requiring more than a year of recovery. During this recovery, she returned to her childhood interest in art with the idea of becoming an artist. She had a special easel built to go over her bed and attached a mirror to the ceiling of her recovery room to see herself lying in bed. For an artist who is immobile, self-portraiture becomes the most obvious subject matter to explore. The severe injuries from this accident, along with complications from polio as a child, plagued her for the rest of her life, but also became an important part of her artwork. In 1927, she joined the Mexican Communist Party, where she met muralist Diego Rivera. The two married in 1929 and had a tumultuous relationship. They shared a deep love and passion, but that often went hand in hand with intense anger and jealousy. Multiple extramarital affairs took place by both Diego and Frida, the latter with both men and women. Much is written on their relationship, and I encourage you to read further on this if you want to learn more about these two artists. Kahlo's mother was a devout Catholic woman, so Frida grew up surrounded by the iconography of the church. This included saints, depicted with expressionless faces, as well as the exposed Sacred Heart of Jesus. This imagery stayed with her and appears often in her self-portraits. Mexican retablos, small religious paintings done by everyday people, most often as thanks to saints for answered prayers. Often made on pieces of tin, these paintings were not concerned with perspective or realism, but instead narrative and allegory. The creators of these retablos were not classically trained artists, but rather devout worshippers giving thanks. These paintings were heavy with religious symbolism and often carried the handwritten story of their creation below the image. The Two Fridas, Las Dos Fridas in Spanish, is an oil painting by Frida Kahlo, completed in 1939. It is her largest work, standing nearly life-size at 68 inches square. The double self-portrait depicts two versions of Kahlo seated together. One is wearing a white European-style Victorian dress, while the other is wearing a traditional Tijuana-style dress. Kahlo painted the Two Fridas in 1939, the same year she divorced artist Diego Rivera, although they did remarry a year later. She describes this painting as nothing but a representation of loneliness and heartbreak after Diego asked for the divorce. The two figures are a forceful depiction of the duality that was a constant presence in her life. On the right, the darker-skinned, more traditionally Tijuana-dressed Frida that Diego preferred. On the left, the lighter-skinned European Frida, which Diego abandoned. It showed the Frida that Diego loved and the one he didn't. The more traditionally dressed Frida holds a small locket featuring a portrait of Diego as a child, an artifact she kept with her until her death in 1954. This Frida's heart is more intact than the other, whose exposed heart and artery bleeds onto her perfectly white Victorian-style dress. She tries to stem the bleeding with surgical forceps, but is unsuccessful. Whew. There is a lot to unpack in some of this symbolism, you guys. The surgical forceps and bleeding artery can be considered a reference to her past of medical procedures and intense physical pain. Frida had over 30 surgeries in her lifetime, including spinal cord surgery and the eventual amputation of her right foot. Medical accoutrements were often seen in her paintings, as well as broken bodies, bleeding figures, and references to human mortality. The exposed heart could imply the Sacred Heart of Jesus, held by the more Western-looking version of herself. Both figures sit straight up in rigid poses with little to no facial expressions. She's painted herself as a saint or a Christ-like figure, including, and this is important, putting her eyes at the viewer's eye level, meaning she is looking at us just as much as we are looking at her. Some art historians also connect the exposed heart to the indigenous Aztec practice of human sacrifice and the heart as the center of life. There are other ways to view the dual figures in this piece, however. Certain art historians have suggested that the two figures in the painting are a representation of Frida's dual heritage. Her father was German and her mother was Mexican. Biracial identity and the struggle of navigating her heritage was another ongoing theme in other artworks by Frida. There is so much to unpack in this artwork that I don't have time to cover during this video, so I encourage you to spend some time looking at this piece on your own. What connections can you draw between the two figures? Kahlo's work is often discussed as belonging to Surrealism, many thanks to André Breton visiting her and Diego at their home in Mexico. Breton was the leader of the Surrealists in Paris at the time. He quite aptly described her and her artwork as like a ribbon around a bomb. Frida herself did not identify as part of the Surrealist movement, though, often disagreeing with the colonial white boys club. She, in her own words, was painting her own reality. Perhaps more than anyone else in history, Frida Kahlo cannot be put into any kind of neat, labeled box. She was a female, disabled, Mexican artist. 3 strikes against her in a white, male, European-dominated art world. And yet, she made herself into a sacred figure to be venerated, an icon painted just like Catholic saints. Not vain, but unwaveringly present. Her work stays with us to this day, celebrated for its human appeal across boundaries of age, gender, or heritage. Her unrelenting honesty over experiences of pain, both physical and emotional, fractured identity, loneliness, miscarriage, love, and disability make it impossible to separate her work and her life. And in the end, I don't really think she would want us to.